Awesome. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Hey? So I've got Ross here with me from Olive Tree Church. If you don't know him, he's married to Amy, and she's an occupational therapist, right? And she runs Kanisa, which is a school for children with learning difficulties and with special needs, right? And they're doing very well, a huge impact they're making in the city. And this is Sia, who is, I would say, Ross is your right-hand man, right?
Some days.
Yeah. He has been so...
Make Ross look good on Sundays.
Yeah, exactly.
This is true.
That's why I'm saying he's your right-hand man. So today we're going to be talking about cross-cultural ministry, multicultural, sorry. And just Olive Tree is a very multicultural church. And just a scripture that stuck out for me with you guys, Ross, is from Jeremiah 29, where it says, "Seek the peace and the prosperity of the city to which I've called you. If it prospers, so will you." And that makes me think of your church. You guys have made a huge impact in the city over the years, even the guys before you that we knew. And so we're very excited to hear your journey. And so I'm going to take a seat and ask them some questions because God's got a lot that I think he wants to say through them. And so the first one for me, Ross, tell us your journey of your church, Olive Tree, the journey that you guys went on to becoming multicultural.
Thank you. It's actually quite funny, me speaking here. You know, if you had to choose between Paul or Peter to speak into multicultural environments, you would choose Paul every day of the week. But I'm like Peter. I'm the oak who got tricked into it. That's what happened with me. Peter Watt over there is the guy who went and lived in Chesterville and learnt how to do this from the heart. He is definitely Paul. He is Paul. I realize your journey into this space is critical and your context is critical. And so I'm going to tell the story because you can land yourself in so much trouble when you say this is how we do multicultural church in a different context. A city context is so utterly different to a suburb context, which is so utterly different to a peri-urban context. Like it would be silly for me to go, this is what will work. That isn't the story. The story is, this is how God bullied me into where we're at. And hopefully this might serve aspects of that. But thank you. What I realize God does, he kind of puts a passion that will then have to face something somewhere along the line. So I have a deep impact. In fact, I walked away from being in ministry at one stage because I felt like the church wasn't really making a difference in the city. We needed transformation. So one of the huge values in my life is, how does the church make an impact? That thing was critical to this journey. There's a second thing, a value that just lives inside of me. I mean, my wife leads a special needs school with 61 people and staff, and she's just started the next one. Like, she's a machine. But it's a special needs school, and the thing about both her and I is we just don't think God made junk. Every single person has potential that just has to be discipled into something effective. Everybody has that. So he puts this inside of you, and then you have to work it out with these easy things called people. But along the journey, what happened was it started with the city impact stuff. I probably have a bit of a bent towards guys in business. I just enjoy them. I enjoy the conversations. I just naturally have lots of friends in business. And I started to realize at the top echelons of business, the most wealthy guys or most influential guys had many white guys had relationships with black guys and vice versa, and Indians. And then as you went down the tiers, there's just this gap. White guys were all on their own, black guys were all on their own, Indian guys were all on their own. There was no connection. And so I started to think to myself, well, if we're going to make an impact in the city, amongst businessmen especially, we can't just have the most influential guys mixing. We have to have it sweep down. And so we would run business meetings regularly, and probably once a term we'd have a big one with a few hundred people there. And so I went, I'm bored of listening to middle-aged white guys tell me how they did it. Let's get some people from different people. Let's get some black guys. Let's get some black ladies to speak. Let's get some Indian people. And so I started to invite different people. And that took me on a journey. Because as soon as, you know what it's like, you invite a speaker, you want to get to know the dude before, and then as you're starting to get, some of my good friends started coming out of that, and I started mixing. Now, another thing I just want to throw into this is that I'm a Zimbabwean, which, especially for the black people here, is a very different experience to South African white. I'm in many ways very dumb when it comes to the pain, the underlying racism, like a lot of that stuff. So when I was growing up, my primary school was 80% black, my senior school was 60% black. One of my best friends who I'd sleep at his house, his name was Tunga, he would sleep at my house. Like, that's how I grew up. And so we had the colonial background and all that mess, but we didn't have South African. And so, listen, can we just like all own it? We're all racists. Okay, now we got that out the way. Mine was just very different. And so I came in with a very curious, like, well, why couldn't we do this? And I just started engaging. So it started, I guess, with the business ministry, and that took me on a journey to friendships. Now, I'll just tell you a story. I hope I don't go too long. Here's just a quick story. One of my mates, African, born and bred black guy who started from like, he was in a taxi at once, like he was running the guy organizing the lifts in the taxi, is now a multi-millionaire. He invites me to his home. And he says to me, because we're good mates now, and he's joking with me, he says to me, Ross, you know, I don't know how to manage this darn house because you white people, you didn't let us learn from you guys. So I have a pool problem that's leaking, and I have a verge problem that's and there's crack in the wall. I don't know what to do with this thing, and so help me. That moment was one of the most critical moments in my journey, because we'd got to a space of friendship where he was able to be vulnerable about stuff that everyone else keeps hidden. And I could serve him, and he'd serve me in so many different ways. But the essence of proximity, if you want to get multicultural right, you just have to have proximity. You have to be close to people so that you're having a conversation. So that was huge. The second thing that God probably led me through was I built a relationship with a church called Father's House in PE. George Giorgio is a Greek guy, and he will tell you that one of his advantages is nobody knows what color he is. So so you don't know whether this is a colored guy, a white guy, Mediterranean, and he just plays it. I mean, he doesn't try and pretend. But he has an understanding of serving people where they're at. And so the way he views himself, he won't tell you this, but I'll tell you on his behalf. He sees himself as a restaurateur. He prepares a meal spiritually, but a restaurant is catalyzed by its environment, by the environment you create. And so if you knew what his budget was on creating an environment that feels safe for multiple different colors, it would freak you out. But he started speaking to me, he said, Russ, you know, with black people, if you're going to create a church that they can walk into and feel safe in, you can't have scatter cushions that look like this. You can't have signage that looks like that. You have to create an environment that they naturally engage in, which is why next chapter on Florida Road works, and I can tell you 50 other restaurants that don't for multicultural spaces. Why? Because they create environments. That conversation led me to ask so many different questions. Now, again and again, this is probably irritating you because you're going like, when is he going to bring the Bible in? I don't know if I will. But But what it was doing was helping me ask the right questions. Most of the problem with people trying to do multicultural churches, they don't ask the right questions, so they don't know how to serve. And you can't serve if you don't understand the context to which you're serving. So that helped me hugely. Then a third thing, we started an internship program because there was like a catalyst thing. Some of you would have known about this, and you basically could pay your interns for free. Didn't cost you anything. So I'm a Zimbabwean, so I milked it. I got a whole bunch of guys, and I'm sitting talking to them the one day about Africa, and one of the girls says to me, Africa and Africans are cursed. And I remember like being shocked. And I said to her, why? And she said, well, whether it's the thing of we're highly resourced and highly resourced places always get taken advantage of, or whether there's a spiritual curse on us. And she talked a little bit, and it sent me on a journey, and I started doing tons of research. And when you start doing the research, you realize the theology that drove a lot of racism and colonialism was out of Genesis 9, the Noah. The problem was Noah cursed Canaan and Ham came to Africa. I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's just like bad theology. They got the wrong oak. I mean, it's that bad. And so I just started doing a talk. I did it with interns. And then I told my one mate about it, and then he started telling other people. And the next thing, I was sitting in front of a bunch of, I was at the ICC the one day doing a talk for a friend, and she said to me, no, you must do that other talk. And so I did this talk on how Africa is not cursed. Poverty is a curse, but you can't deal with that curse unless you deal with this curse. And I just preached a message of how to turn the curse into the blessing through Jesus. A politician came up to me afterwards, and he said, I've never heard a white man speak like this. I've never heard this before in my life. Please will you pray for me? Thank you so much. And I started to realize, okay, maybe God, you're doing something in this guys, listen, that oak has got the heart for this. This oak woke up one day and had a multicultural church. But this was the journey. And then there were probably a couple of other things. Tell me to shut up when I'm going too far. After the internship, Black Lives Matter hit the streets. And because I'm a Zimbabwean and an idiot, I thought, let's talk about this. And I did quite an average to bad job on it. I want you to know that the day that I was about to address the issue, I had to turn my phone off because white people were phoning me and swearing at me. It was the most hectic experience of my life, and they didn't even know what I was going to say. And literally, all I had to say, I mean, I was getting phone calls from Salt Rock, I was getting phone from all over the show, because we had a hashtag Black Lives Matter logo on our Facebook. I was so blown away, because all we were going to say is, man, before you pick a side on this thing, you need to hear each other's stories. You just have to learn some empathy. Anyway, we lost a whole bunch of people in our church. Like, it was phenomenal, the impact. And at that moment, I realized how little I actually knew about South Africa. Because you think you know it, but then you really when you start scratching, you realize, oh, we're in a lot of trouble. But that conversation, whether we did it badly or not, plus a couple of other things, I think created a safe environment for black people in our church. It suddenly created a little bit of safety. And then, this is going to be funny, but during COVID, so we started off, I guess, as a, 90% white church? Oh, no, somewhere there, 80% white church. And then during COVID, you know what white people like? They weren't prepared to lead worship because in level 5 lockdown, because they would get COVID from the next oak. I mean, you got to love it. The black oaks were like, of course we'll come sing. Mosque, what's that? And they came, and so our worship had one white guy and a whole bunch of very gifted black guys and ladies singing. And that messaging sent just across the people that we were kind of reaching, sent this like, hey, you're safe here message. And so I had people come up to me, black people come up to me and say, you know what, we used to walk past this church and we never went in because it was a white church. But now we've realized it's changed and we feel safe here. And it just began to shift things. And so end of COVID, the number one reason for church growth after COVID is that people moved to your area. Well, Morningside changed quite dramatically. So we went to sleep and it was a fairly mixed area. And then we woke up and it was colored, black, Indian. Where are those whitos? Anyway, they're gone. And then we started to realize, man, this is a multicultural church. Now, in that space, I just want to speak to you because if your church changes, you've got to be prepared for this. You've just lost a ton of mates who are like you and think like you and are easy to do life with. And God has just given you a whole bunch of beautiful people who you don't know are beautiful yet. Let me just tell you, that's easy on the soul. Doesn't take any strain. I'm completely joking. It is brutal. And you have to have a theology that is so fixed in God placed me, He's called me, and these people have potential that I'm called to release, I'm called to reach in, and we're still called to make an impact in the city. Just we're differently influential now. So best you find what the talent is sitting there so that you can release it. So that's the journey to how we woke up one day and we were a multicultural church that I think is really beautiful. There's the story.
Nice. And so it's God made it, the space, you worked with God to make the space, right, for multicultural. I mean, it's not like you rejected it, you were like owning it, right?
Yeah, a bit like Peter got the vision and then the oaks were at the door.
And Sia, you came to the church in 2016, you were saying, right? And so you lead the young adults and you lead the evening service, that's right? And so tell us a bit, I've heard that you're quite intentional, like with building young people in terms of being multicultural. What did that look like for you? What did you exactly do?
Okay, with the remaining 2 minutes, just had to take my chance.
God bless you.
So that journey kind of started when I was working for one of our sites, which was very white. And the beginning was very cool, like always just bring my friends around, but I got to a point where, I'll just be honest about it, I was tired of being the black guy in church. Like it actually got to a point it just wasn't cool. Now obviously that's no one's fault. It's the nature of the location. All of those things play a role in the dynamics of the demographics that you get in church. So that started to egg in my soul a little bit. I wanted to paint a picture of what heaven would look like one day and lead a ministry that paints a picture of what heaven is going to look like one day. Now, there was a dream, there was a heart desire, but obviously I had no real plan on how to do that. The one thing that I did have was God's help and incredible gifting, not to like speak too highly of myself, but I think I'm gifted in a way that allows me to, I can have a conversation with anyone, young, old, middle-aged, black, white, Indian, and I think I do a fairly good job just because of environmental impact as well as God's gifting to be sensitive enough in that conversation to make the person feel safe, feel seen, feel welcome, feel loved, all the things that actually make someone feel like I could come back here because of this person that engaged with me. So that's how God has gifted me. So I knew enough of those things to like, cool, if you want to reach young people, and most of us might know this age-old saying that people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. So we need to create an environment where young people felt like they could connect with someone or connect with people. I was listening to a John Marcoma thing on hospitality yesterday, and he says that the LGBTQ community does a better job of being hospitable than the church does. So if we are already starting at like -5, there's a lot of work to be done to actually just get to the neutral and then get to the positive end. So that was a dream, that was a goal, and I knew, okay, we need to create an environment that makes young people feel safe. I'm gonna have to run it at the beginning, because obviously there's no leadership team. I had to trust God, and every single person on our leadership team, I chose and followed God's leading and prompting to invite onto leadership, and they're all different demographics: white, Indian, colored, black. Yeah, that's all of them. They cover all, but it's not like it was a strategy. It was really just a leading by the Holy Spirit to be like, that person's ready to be asked. Because it took time, obviously. It took maybe a year, maybe a year and a bit, to get to 18 leaders to lead our ministry. But along the way, what I would do is, because I know that I'm a machine at like welcoming people and having conversations that make people feel like they're the most important person in that moment. I'm your best hype man. Like, that's the easiest thing that I could do. So every single person who rock up, I would hype them up, and any potential leader or someone that was laid in my heart to be invited to leadership, I'd rope them into the conversation. Because I don't want the culture of connecting to people to just exist within myself. I want to teach our guys, we create an environment of welcoming and safety and love and caring. So this person who might not necessarily be can easily just walk up to someone and have a conversation, I've now created a bridge between that and engaging with someone that they don't know or have never spoken to. So one of the people that is also very good at having first-time conversations with someone is Jonathan. So someone would rock up, I'd welcome them, have a short conversation. Hey, have you guys met Jono? Jono, this is so-and-so. Stay there for about 5 minutes, and I'd watch him engage with the guys and see how good he actually does. And if the conversation feels safe enough for me to leave, I'd leave and go chat to somebody else. And I would just do this week in and week out, the first 2 weeks. When I say to you, there's like a ton of white people, ton of black people, ton of Indian, ton of, what race am I missing? Colored. We just created an environment that made every single one of them feel safe. Because the most fundamental thing that every single human being is looking for is to feel seen, safe, loved, and connected to. So when we got that part right, where people felt connected to a very large degree, then you can begin to roll out all the other stuff. So we had somewhat of a pretty good, I don't want to say step-by-step thing. This is like our guidance, and it's really rooted in biblical observation, is that once they're connected, we have to get them saved. Like, once they're connected into our community, get them saved so they believe in Jesus, get them filled with the Holy Spirit, and activating and operating in their spiritual gifts, and then get them serving the city and serving your church and the greater church of Durban, really. So once we did all of those things, we decide that. They don't set the model of how we do our ministry. We created that model, and they get to fit into that model. But the most important step was making guys feel connected, seen, safe, loved, all those things that are important on the front end, which is why I think our hospitality teams, our welcoming teams are the most underrated people in our church. Because the first 5 seconds of when someone walks into your building are the most important. Your car guards, how you select your car guards, is the most important thing, because they are the first experience people have of your church. But we often think, okay, I'll just hire just about anyone. I had to have a very hard conversation with some of our car guards around how do you smell when you come to work, what you do the night before is important, your facial expression, all those things are, because you are not just a car guard. You can't just be lax. You actually have to really represent Olive Tree, because people experience you first before they ever get to the door. So all those things play an important role in how safe people feel before they ever get to oh my gosh, this message is amazing. The worship is incredible. That, I think, is secondary to how did I feel when I was in that space. Ross, I've told him this story, not told him, but shared this story to church. But the first time I came to Olive Tree, yes and no. The first time I came to Olive Tree, because I'd come from a different church and I had some understanding of the dynamics of church, I had expectations cool, someone's gonna welcome me, walk me to my seat, because that's what the environment I came from. Guys at the door were just on their phone, so I kind of just walked in. I was like, cool. Carried on walking. I didn't know where to go, which direction, or is it upstairs, because all the doors were closed. And then this one lady came and she greeted me with a big smile, okay, she's gonna help me. She just carried on walking. So cool. So now I just followed one guy who looked like I knew where he was going, walked in. Sat, enjoyed the service, was phenomenal. Walked out. Again, no one spoke to me afterwards, and I just stood there by myself. I was like, okay, cool. When I went home, I was like, I'm never coming back here again. And the thing that in the conversation, in the conversation with God, the thing that was most pressed in my soul was, if you leave, that'll never change, because you know how that feels like. Be the person that makes the difference in the space. So I went back and I signed up to serve the very next Sunday. So I was there welcoming in the front. So it's really modeling on the front end and then bringing people along the journey, no matter the race, to understand the importance of why we do the things that we do. So they aren't just doing a function or doing a task, but they are connected to the reasoning why we get to do the things that we do. Because it's not just about, oh, I'm just going to set up a chair. No, that chair that you're setting up is someone's seat. That's a host of the Holy Spirit. Someone's going to rest there and experience. So you could literally pray over every seat as you set the seats, so that when someone walks in and sits there, they're already so whatever. So you give far greater reasoning to why people do stuff than just, okay, I'm just going to put it, or just stand here at welcome or do whatever. So that's a little bit of the reasoning and the desire for my
Excellent.
journey.
It's such intentionality. Hey, I think like that whole thing of sometimes we see where God wants to take us, but it's the process of becoming that model. And sometimes God speaks that over us. And as we obey him, it becomes clearer to people. And that's obviously what you've done. We need like 100 seers, right? 100 million seers. And your name says it all, right? Seer, a prophetic person. So did the two of you have did you go on any significant heart journey along the way? And were there moments where you were like hooked with each other in this journey of
a lot. Ross and I just
becoming
fought
multicultural?
years.
Tell us about it.
No, I don't think so. Maybe Ross has a different experience.
Okay.
And I guess if it comes out now, we'll sozo after this.
I'm just wondering what hooked means, because like, yeah, in Durban, hook is like a punch, right?
Oh, no.
So
I think
there
it's
was
like
it wasn't that, right?
So sometimes a white person can say something, or a black
Yeah.
person can say something, or a colored person can say something in jest or like with no real ill intent that can really just hurt a person, or just like cause that like a triggering thing within a person's emotional state of being, or whatever the case might be. So hook is like, oof, that didn't actually land too well or feel too good. So that's what we mean by hook. Now this is where I think my backstory has helped this relationship, because so I grew up in Greytown. I went to an English and Afrikaans school, and from grade R I was in white schools. English Afrikaans school from grade 1 up until matric. My parents never ever bickered or moaned about like, oh, white people this or white people that. They just were so focused on giving their best to the kids, with the absolute best that they had. I was exposed to very white environments from a very young age. I wasn't really, to my recollection, exposed to high levels of racism enough for me to have like be on the defensive at any given point in a conversation. Like I'm always waiting for someone to like hook me or hurt me or whatever else. I wasn't ever exposed to that, because even the white people that I got to experience were so friendly, so kind, so caring, really wanted to give me the best, exposed me to like a different way of living than I would have otherwise been exposed to if I wasn't in those environments. So the starting place already is like, so I think I probably err on the side of not doing a good job of understanding the pain of black people and the racism that they actually really got to experience. And not just so our generation works on the pain of the generation that came before, and not necessarily like I lived in racism. But because it's like almost passed down, that's a pain realm. So, but we need to understand the generation above and the pain that they experience enough to really begin to do the work of, okay, now how do we do things differently going forward? I'm really an advocate of, okay, yes, that's how things were done before, but doesn't mean that we have to do the same things now to achieve the same result or achieve some certain result. We need to figure out a different way to make a difference, a different way to create impact, a different way to bring about change. It can't just be that this is the only way that works. I refuse to believe that. And that's just intrinsic in my own way of doing life. So by the time I got to Ross, I did experience some racism in the Western Cape. I won't lie. Like there was, George is very, very racist. But those things were laughable to me. Like, are we really still here? Are we really still like living our lives that way? Surely now the work should be understanding, so we do things differently. So by the time we got here and started having those conversations, they were easy conversations. Ross has never said something that I actually had to go home and be like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. The thing that maybe would be like a potential hook is someone that I don't know. If someone says something that, like for example, went to a conference not too long ago and someone greeted me in Zulu. Now the first thing I always go to is like, I want to understand why you felt the need to do that. Are you subtly implying that I don't really speak English that well, or I can't speak English? Or are you trying to be kind, or you say, hey, let me just meet you at your level? What level is that? And like all those things run through my mind before I even answer you back. So, but that could be like are we going to fight now? No. I have to understand before I even get to a point of responding. But before any of that, it's like, someone says that now, like, why would you say that? And it's like, now let's fight. I don't think that's the best response to those moments.
Can I just speak to this? So our journey that has probably produced the most health is regular conversations like that. Understanding what. And the greatest gift that Sia and a couple of my other staff are to me is that they are soft hearts, tough skin. So they will point out where I'm racially stupid and help me see it differently without getting massively offended. And so if you're of a different color, the greatest gift you can give is the starting place of the oak's just dwarf, not he's evil. And so that's the gift they've given me. So I feel like I have had so many conversations, taking Rick down for worship at a wedding, driving here with this guy, just these constant conversations about, hey, how does that make you feel? Why are you voting for the EFF? Help me understand your view on what's happening in Florida Road. Like, constant curiosity creates a space where you actually can work out how to serve your people. And so Sia it's a non-ending gift that he doesn't get offended, but he'll say to me, oh, when that person did that, it felt a little bit weird. And I'm like, oh, don't do that. And then what I often find is that I go into environments. I had Sia at a brother one day with a bunch of white mates, and I almost died by how stupid they were. They just said stuff. Now, he has the grace to put up with it, but they just said stuff that they completely didn't mean to in any way offend, but because I'd had so many conversations with different guys, I was like, what are you thinking? You nuts. Like, you just don't go there. And I think one of the bigger problems that we have at the moment is just too much emotion, not enough education, just educating each other amongst staff in an adult-to-adult way and not a parent-child kind of vibe.
So obviously that takes leadership, right? And like you were saying, like to train the people is important so that they catch the heart. You're spending time, you're talking about investing time, learning. So in terms of your leadership style and your just the way that you did stuff, tell us a bit about that. And like, what did you change and what did you keep the same?
So like she was talking about your hospitality, where when we were a white church, I didn't really put much energy into the hospitality team. As a multicultural church, I probably churn out a video a month of training, and I am engaging non-stop in helping our hospitality team get better, or teams get better. And here's why. A black person walks into church, they look down, they don't look up at you, and the white person disengages, or the Indian person disengages. And so what you actually will see, if you watch just a social experiment, you will literally see people engage with their race subconsciously because of social cues and ignore the other races because of social cues. And so you have to consistently be driving in the heartbeat and then giving the skills. How do I engage with that person? How do I make that person feel welcome? What are they probably scared about? I mean, just imagine you walking into a church. You know what it's like when you walk into a new church. Unless you're a pastor or you've done this thing for years, your starting place is anxiety. And so it's just, how do you reduce anxiety as the person's coming in? And a lot of our environments actually just create huge amounts of anxiety. So one of the things I personally work on quite hard is the hospitality thing. I think some of the things that stayed the same, and you can speak to this, we're not trying to be the church for everyone. So this is offensive to lots of people who are passionate about the multicultural space. We don't sing Zulu songs. We speak English the whole time intentionally. Here's why. I guess we are trying to reach a kind of Model C type person, but we have a church literally 3 kilometers down the road that's reaching someone in a slightly different LSM. We're just going, we need to reach that group of people, and there are a ton of those people. There are about 6 of those schools in Morningside, like right around us. We have to think those people. Well, if we're going to stay multicultural and we start singing in Zulu, it's not going to work. White people are going to leave, Indian people are going to leave. Like, it's just not going to happen. If we're going to speak in multiple languages, I get the heartbeat of that, but it's just going to be ineffective in terms of helping our people integrate. We have to neutralize to create integration, not create more diversity. It would just be too difficult at the moment. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I think the thing with that as well is, if, let's just say, for example, Ross and I, because now Olive Tree Church has become multicultural, we change the way that we do things. We're letting the church dictate how we feel called to do church. And that, I don't think, is the best way to respond to that. And it also goes back to, if now we're reacting to people in a certain way, what are we actually communicating, if you know what I'm saying? Like, are we trying to say, oh yeah, we are for black people if you sing black songs? I don't think that's the case. If anything, I said it's disingenuous, because you aren't doing the work to actually connect with a black person. You sing a black song does nothing to connect to a black person. It's nice, but I mean, you still have to, like, there's so much work that has to be done before you ever really get to that point. So we stick to, especially young adults ministry, like the model, we stick to our style. People can decide if this is my style of church or not, and that's okay. Like, people can go where they're going to grow. But if people feel like this is the place that I feel safe, seen, loved, and this is the place where I can grow because our style is our style of church, then fantastic. And our leadership style is always like, now, because we are multicultural, doing the work of trying to understand all the different cultures that are in our church, enough to, when we engage in conversations, we're not doing it from, I'm looking down on you, or I'm afraid looking up. Like, you know, we aren't doing it from a place of pride or fear or whatever else, but we genuinely want to connect to people because people matter and people have value. And we want to do the work of making them feel like this place can be your home, if you so choose, because at the end, it is still up to you if you want to call this place home. So we've got to keep true to our guns and not let how the dynamic of church change how we do church, so we make them feel safe. There's so many other ways to do that, and we'll highlight that later on.
I mean, little things that have actually helped the journey. Humor is a great race neutralizer. Like, you can rip yourself off as a white person, that's not hard. You've got to be careful on it, but what I realized early on, very careful on ripping off black, white, I wouldn't go there. But what I realized quite early on is my colored community would give it straight back, and they enjoyed it. Yeah. And the ones who didn't left, but I couldn't build with them anyway. And so I started engaging and just ripping off the bluff, and like just having quite intentional conversations. I generally would bounce off humor before, just to make sure it wasn't too awkward. And one day, a colored person comes up to me and this lady said to me, she said, you know, it takes us as colored people a number of years before we trust a leader, but we now trust you. And what had actually happened is my dumb humor had opened up conversations. The conversations had led to trust. And over a period of consistency and time, they'd connected. Now, I'm not saying be funny if you're not funny, etc. But what I am saying is find out ways to provoke relationship and conversation on the back end, especially if you've got a crowd, because different colors will stay further away. So you have to provoke it to draw it closer, and then you have to engage, and you have to be really intentional about how you do that.
So is there any questions from you guys that you're wanting to ask these two experts? I'm joking.
What time did we finish?
So, yeah, well, we started at 15:15, right? So we've got, how long still, a fair?
I think we can take a few questions.
Yeah, and then,
It's going into a tea break and then 5
yeah.
minutes, so I can see a live.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Okay. So maybe we'll take 2 questions on the floor. All right.
I just wanted to ask, when you said, Sia, that when somebody greets to you in Zulu and you wonder about that, it's not really pertaining to the church, but my workplace. When you have someone that's of a different language group and they are engaging in a multicultural situation, but only in their language, how would you break down, or how would you approach something like that?
You asked the question. Well, how could you ask the question differently? I'm not sure if I understand.
How do you react to people that are very much rooted in their culture to the almost
Extreme.
exclusion
Oh, exclusion.
of another culture? I don't know if you have that
Yeah.
situation.
I don't know if I've ever experienced that level of extreme, but I always, so even let's just take that example of someone greeting me in Zulu. I don't take offense to that. My starting point is I want to understand that person's reasoning to get to that point. I think because I'm naturally someone who actually just, even the most extreme case, like I'll paint an example for, like when I was in George, for example, a friend of mine, we're staying in the supposed white part of town. So we were leaving youth one Friday. We were walking across to our house. It must have been like 20 meters from our house. And prior to that, like a neighborhood watch had driven by. And then 5 minutes later, 5 cars all around us, flashlights in our face. I'm not even joking with you. Like, hey, where you going? So in those moments, like naturally, like you'd be ready to give back. When I say to you, I was cool, calm. I didn't even care like that they chose. Like, what a waste of petrol. Because really, like, all you could have done when you drove past is ask me, hey, where you going? I could have shown you my tag because you're doing your job, and I can appreciate that. Because, I mean, not everyone is obviously out for good intent. But in that moment, literally just, bruh, I'll stay right around the corner. Like, it's not a hooking thing. It's not a hard thing. It's not a, but this is just me. Not everyone is going to be that way. And that's because of my experience. Like, growing up, I didn't experience such great levels of pain and, I suppose, the pain of apartheid enough to get to the point where, like, in any conversation or any moment I'm experiencing, like, cultural exclusion, I want to fight. No, if that's how you want to do things, cool. You can continue to do things your way. But how I choose to live my life is that I want to be culturally inclusive, which means I care about every single person that doesn't look like me.
So good.
And the thing that I actually really have to do is ask the right questions to understand their starting point. Because it's not the same as you or somebody else. Like, and then that, in and of itself, it creates levels or points of connection enough for over time to have a strong relational bond where we can joke about culture and racial stuff and it not be like sore or harmful or hurtful or whatever.
Such a beautiful heart. Here you go.
So I just wanted to find out, because unfortunately I think there have been individuals who have been raised in somewhat same environment as you, Sia. However, I wanted to find out in the extreme sense that you have people that have an extreme mindset that, all right, this is who I am. This is, okay, for instance, as you can hear with my accent, I'm dealing with Zulu people who automatically assume that I am Zulu. And they are offended the fact that I am not when I do say I am not. And, you know, and I've forgiven them because it is what it is. I am
You have
so
white people problems. It's wonderful.
And my question is more in a sense that as a leader or as a minister, and we can foresee that one day we are going to be a multicultural church if we're not already, but we're multicultural within the black community. So we have Zulus, Zimbabweans, you know, so it's quite multicultural in that sense. But how do we, because you kind of are seeing people, you know, inquiring, can we come, who are of the beautiful, you know, skin, and so they are inquiring and they want to come through, and then you're saying, okay, the people that we are with right now have an extreme mindset of this is who we are and we want to protect it at all costs. That also includes certain mindsets that also can be poverty stricken mindsets, where it's going to be, if I do have my sister coming in and she says I want to be a part of this, then we're going to deal with, you know, just unnecessary politics of, okay, she probably has somebody who can give me a job. You know, it's just things that will just become and create a ripple effect. And you want to integrate and you want to be in, I mean, you already see God is creating space already for that, but now the thing is now the people. And
While Sia's thinking, because he whispered to me, this is an easy question. I want to reverse it for you for a second. If for my Kloof community, for example, I know the thing I need to do is expose them to more and more different colored people in adult-to-adult relationships, because the modeling from stage is going to result. But I don't have a 3-month plan to get there. I have a 2-year journey on it.
Yeah, so I definitely say that it takes quite a great deal of time to be able to change hearts, especially more so on the people that are in your church than the white lady coming in. Because this is where, I suppose, so the white person has to understand you're carrying the hurts of your own, now engaging in a multi-racial conversation. You can't just come in like, oh, I'm sorry, and then that's it. You're carrying your ancestors' things on you, and there has to be a lot of work done in the black-white, from the white person to the black person. Black person to the white person, there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen, and letting go, and healing that needs to happen within those. And that, I think, is a little bit harder, because, man, there was great deal of injustice that was done. Now, if I look at the guys in your congregation, it kind of seems like there needs to be like quite a great deal of mindset shift. There needs to be a heart shift. And I think I don't know who leads that. You. Do you lead the church? Yeah. So that it almost has to. You guys have to slowly but surely do the work of helping guys heal, helping mindsets shift, so that over time, as you slowly begin to integrate people of different color, they don't see them as an opportunity, but as an individual that I can begin to engage in conversation with, to try and understand, or try and actually just, hey, welcome to our church, it's so good to have you, and just carry on living your life, and not necessarily start from hey man, this is my experience outside of church, and now let me see if I can change that, because this person is obviously superior in my mindset, and then exploit that to my own good. That also isn't good. If you think about it, it sounds a little bit like, anyway.
It's good.
That's what I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's what I think.
Okay, so we have got the looking up upstairs. I see there's a lot of hands. So we're going to give you guys, because it is a tea break, you're welcome to go to your tea break if you need to. We're going to leave these guys on the floor. You can ask them questions. Unfortunately, the host has to also go. So we've got the looking in thing upstairs. So, yeah, it was very good. So we're going to open it up. I'm going to start with you because you've been... So the rest of you, if you'd love to go, thank you for joining us, and it's been great, Ross and Sia. It's been so informative and helpful, and really, it's stuff we've got to process, right? And intentionally, like they were saying, intentionally walk through this journey. So over to you.
Thank you. I've got a bit of, I don't know if it's a deep question, but I hope I hope it makes sense to you. I just wanted to find out, so we've sort of had this massive, so we've gotten from colonization to apartheid, and it's sort of been this massive, or sort of many years, or generation to generation of just this oppression, if I may call it that. And what I just wanted to find out, what do you think, how has it impacted the people who were oppressed, and how has that, some people call it the legacy of apartheid or colonization, how has that affected us, and what is the church doing about it, or should the church's response be to all these mindsets, or sort of all the generational things that we carry with us? Yeah.
It's such a big question that we can't actually do it justice. But here's the sin, the ultimate sin and evil, is that white people destroyed black people's identity. That was the, you see, resources you can recover. Education, you can get re-educated. All the trappings, all the other stuff, you can get back. But if you take a person's identity and then you speak a lie into the identity, you've cracked the fabric of the entire culture. The evil is the identity theft. The healing is not to try and start at the top and work through. The healing is on the identity restoration. No, you're not cursed. No, you're not all those things that were said about you. Actually, you've got probably more potential than I do. Man, this is what God's called you to. This is who He calls you. And that journey, that identity root cause healing, that will result in our nation's healing. Unfortunately, I think we have attacked this from often wrong angles, and so we can't see healing. You've obviously got to attack it from many angles, but the root is the thing that I got on my knees for was, Lord, we've stolen a people's identity. Please, can you give me a chance to fix that? That's been the journey.
And I think the way that we do that, and I don't think there's any way to fix stuff without Jesus. Like, we can try by our own means, like, okay, let's try level the playing field and let's just take the women equality, equal pay situation, or women being seen in a certain way. Like, we can come up with systems and think great ideas to fix that thing. But if Jesus isn't involved in that, or isn't the first thing, or the main thing, or the root of the solution, then we're going to, at some point, catch ourselves again, because our brokenness is going to expose itself and might even amplify the problem some way down the line, or start a new one. So if we stray far from Jesus, when we're like, cool, how do we begin to do the work to actually start fixing some stuff? We first need like a really deep heart change, a really deep soul change, allowing Him to do the internal work that I have to own. And it's not somebody else has to do the work for me or push me to doing it. But if I'm willing to do the work, because if we're saying everyone needs to all these people need to do X, Y, and Z, if someone is deciding for somebody else to do the hard work of finding Jesus, getting the healing, and then beginning the journey to actually start to fix some stuff, that's going to run short at a certain point and just run out. If it's Jesus and your own thing, just owning, hey, I was wrong here, I could have done it better here, I need to forgive here. Imagine, for example, if everyone grabbed a hold of that right now, where would SA be in 5 years? I refuse to believe that Jesus is not the answer. He has to be the first solution to anything that we face in our LGBTQ, all these things has to start with Jesus. And then you can begin to build from that.
Okay, let's take, I think one more question and then we'll cut to the gym.
Okay, now I can speak softer. It's not really a question, but like I was really drawn to what you said about like when someone greets you in Zulu and then you're just like, like why? You know what I mean? I live in a rural area, and I go to a white church. It's a bit multicultural also, and I deal a lot with like kids ministry and youth. So I had these two girls. They're still in primary school, and they were asking me. They're my neighbors also, and they were asking me, why do the other kids just? So my name's Nipo, so they're asking me like, why do the other kids call you Nipo, and then we're supposed to say Malum Nipo or Uncle Nipo? Like, why? Because why don't we just call you Nipo like the other kids? And I'm like, well, with how we're raised up as Zulu people is that with someone who's older than you and not of your family, whatever, you'll use malume or baba or something. Yeah. And I was also just explaining that to them in the sense that like, because this is just what I know, I might be wrong, but with white people, it's usually a thing of, we usually go on the first name basis thing just for like familiarity and just trying to be on the same level, and you know what I mean, just to break that barrier between like, you know what I mean, it's more friendly. With us, it's more like you having respect for the, you know, the other person. And for me, when I had to answer that question and just explain to them why that happens, because like with the parents, I know the parents encourage them to say, yo, malum nipo, and this. So what I try and do is, you know, when I see a black person, I also do that thing where I see a black person and I assume you're Zulu, because I'm sorry, but I also do that. Like I'll assume you Zulu and assume you know Zulu until you tell me otherwise, which is fine. So when I see an adult, for instance, someone who's new in my church, I'll always refer to them as Babus Banban, or I'll ask them their surname, because that's just how I know with our culture, that's what we do. So if you came to my church, I'd probably, okay, but you look very young, and you know, I'll probably greet you in English, but then, you know, someone else I could just greet in Zulu, because I'm assuming you're Zulu, but it's not even a thing of that I'm trying to offend you or something else. It's just that as much as we are trying to, you know, you talk about like being neutral and everything, but at the same time, you also just want people to like embrace their culture and who they are, and so far as it doesn't stand in the way of the work of the Lord. So it's I always encourage, you know, people just to, you know, embrace their culture, who they are, and I don't know, it's not really a question, but I was touched by that, and this is how I usually deal with things like that. Yeah.
Thanks, Boot Nibu.
Thank you, Nipo. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for your time and for your input, and everyone that joined us. Enjoy your tea. We'll see you in the main hall after lunch, I think.
Thank you.